Hello and welcome to Whyte Design, the podcast where we explore the stories behind the founders and senior leaders shaping the world of physical product development. I'm Chris Whyte, your host and founder of Kodu, a recruitment company dedicated exclusively to physical product development. Over the past decade, I've had the privilege of interviewing remarkable people in this space, and their incredible stories inspired me to create this podcast. In each episode, we dive into the journeys, insights, and lessons from founders and design leaders driving innovation in people and planet-friendly hardware. So let's get started. In today's episode, I'm joined by Benn Klewpatinond, founder of Inond Design. Benn's career is a fascinating blend of engineering, design, and entrepreneurship. From his early work introducing inclusive design at Bristan to his pivotal role at LA Design, where he developed the innovative Floatrower, Benn has built a career turning ideas into impactful realities. Now, as the founder of Inond Design, Benn focuses on product realisation, helping clients bring their visions to life from ideation through to manufacturing and beyond. In this conversation, we'll explore the challenges of launching a groundbreaking fitness product, the value of storytelling in design, and why honesty about the journey is so important. If you're curious about how creativity meets practicality in product design, or the lessons Benn has learned about balancing ambition with authenticity, this episode is for you. Okay, Benn, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
You're very welcome. It's great to have you. So, yeah, let's walk through your design journey then. So, Benn, your career has been full of twists and turns, starting out in corporate roles before transitioning into consultancy and ultimately founding your own business. You began in the bathroom fittings industry at Bristan, where you introduced inclusive design processes, but it was at LA Design when things really took off. That's where you not only honed your design engineering skills, but also developed Floatrower, a project that combines your love of rowing with cutting-edge innovation. Floatrower became a major milestone for you as you left LA Design to focus on it full-time, building a team and taking the product from concept through to market. When that chapter closed, you decided to take everything you'd learned and launch Inond, a consultancy focused on what you call product realisation. You've built a business that's about so much more than design, covering everything from ideation through to supply chain setup. I'm also really interested in how you've been putting yourself out there recently, whether it's on LinkedIn or connecting with clients in a way that feels genuinely personal. We'll dive into that, plus the lessons you've picked up along the way, the challenges of scaling, and how your work continues to evolve. So there's so much to get into. So let's get on with it, shall we? How was that as an intro for you, Benn?
That was incredible. Thanks, Chris. I think you can do all of my copy and my intros from now on.
Yes, well, we'll talk about the invoicing structure for that after the show, shall we? Well, like I say, it's great to have you on here. So why don't we rewind time and start at the beginning? Why design? How did you get into product design?
Why design? So it's one of those things from school. I'm actually one of those ones, I think a rarity now, I think you see a lot, where I actually decided to do it at graphic products at GCSEs to A-levels to university and then find a job actually after university in design. But I think when I actually started was, wanting to design products, wanting to make things, wanting to solve problems. And there was also a combination between art and design, but it was always that design, mathematical and engineering side that actually drew my attention to that world.
Okay. What was it about the engineering side? Because often that's the bit that puts people off, isn't it? Unless you want to go into pure mechanical engineering and you're driven by the maths. But then you've kind of gone into product kind of companies, which has a lot more of the creative side. So what was it about the engineering that drew you?
I think it's always been a combination of the two, to be honest with you, because it's, you can design amazing products and lovely products, but then how do you make them and how do you make them work? And I think that's always been the thing for me, stereotypical building, breaking things down, or, Lego or as a kid, and all of that kind of playing world has always been fascinating. And how do things work, and being inquisitive and asking those questions. And that's always had me. And it was when I then had to make decisions about what it is I wanted to do moving forward was, well, why don't I try this? And I think at the time of making those decisions, I'm the youngest of four boys and probably the one that can get away with anything he wanted to, with also probably at home with the family, as well as whatever you want to do with your career, your life, you probably can go do it. And so why not try? Why not have that creative side as well as going out there and trying to develop new things and solve problems?
Amazing. And is there engineering and design in the family then?
More engineering, Chris.
Yeah.
My dad is more of an engineering side of things, from the chemical and mechanical side of things. But most of my others are more towards the sales, marketing, or chemical and biological sciences.
Okay.
We've got a couple of PhDs as well in the family, and that's all from the science side of things. So,
wow,
varied.
So, was there ever was there ever an expectation? And I know you say you got away with a lot of things, you could do what you like, but you've got a lot of talent, a lot of intelligence in the business, a lot, and if there's sales there as well, there's a lot of kind of characters, I imagine, and charisma. How was that kind of growing up around that? And do you feel like you had to live up to any expectations?
Probably not. It's probably that free-spirited. Probably very privileged in that way, to be honest with you. I'm going to be honest, because I am half Thai as well and half Scottish. I know there's me and my brothers. I don't know anyone else who's like that, so if there's anyone else, reach out. But very privileged in that way that we've been exposed to a lot of different cultures, as well as our upbringing has been very exposed, if you like, from the UK as well as Thailand, and traveling when I was very young. So to be able to have that and kind of bring that all into what it is, who I am, basically, is really important. And I think from the exposure to all of that, as well as the family side of things, there's been a lot of entrepreneurship in the family and building people their own businesses. And now even with my wife's family, there's entrepreneurship in there, and people from her family building their own businesses. So you kind of have you always see it as you grow up. And even if you want to try and focus on one direction, you've always then seeing what's happening from the business world of someone going out and doing it themselves and building their own business. So that's always been there. So it's probably infused in throughout the years.
Well, there's the whole nature nurture argument, isn't there? And a lot of successful people will kind of put a lot of their character down to the people they associate with. And I've read something earlier on LinkedIn actually that kind of you're the sum of the 10 people you spend the most time with in a lot of ways. So you've obviously you've had great kind of role models there. So that's wonderful. So then you studied computer aided product design, and then went on and did a master's in design and clinical practice.
Critical practice.
Critical practice. Apologies. Yes, I misread that. Yeah. So, and then there's the placement, I think, with the plastics company, but your real kind of first kind of foray into design was Bristan. So quite a recognisable business.
Mm-hmm.
And it says here that you were awarded the star performer. What did you have to do to that? And what was that, like end of year awards, or was that part of a grad scheme? Or talk us through that.
As I read that again, as you say, it sounds like I've been in Panto or something. No, there were a few awards actually, and it was really lovely to receive those. Those were internal awards because they're more recognising big achievements within the business, obviously. And I think there was a couple with innovation, as well as the star performer was because of launching, and it's one of those key moments in your career, launching my first range of products, so taps and showers, into Homebase back in the day. I'm sure it still exists.
Yeah.
So it was one of those moments where you go in, you've developed it, and it's on the shelf, and you've got a whole stack of them with the prices. Go in, take a selfie. But I think when that launched, that was one of the most successful products that year in the business. So being the designer of it, obviously meant I was the star performer, or awarded that and recognised for it.
That's great though, isn't it? And it's one of the, I think one of the most kind of tangibly wonderful things about design is seeing your stuff either in the shop or being used by people. And you know, there's not many professions where that's even a thing, is it? So yeah, and especially in kind of the consumer space, you can literally go down to your local store and it's like, I made that.
Yeah,
I made the design.
It is one of those lovely things, because I think it's that kind of that pinnacle that you want to get to. Your first milestone is developing something or designing something that is out there in the real world, not just on your computer or on your desk behind you, and like you said, when you see other people using it, it becomes real. And for awesome. People to pay their money to buy something as well from that consumer space, it becomes very, very exciting, actually.
That's wonderful. Any kind of, obviously that was a kind of a milestone in your career, but is there anything that you learned during your time at Bristan that stays with you? any kind of those life lessons that have helped you throughout your career?
Yeah, definitely. So Bristan, they're a large company anyway in the UK, but they are then part of a global conglomerate, if you like, or massive corporate called Masco Corporation, who own a myriad of different companies, even more bathroom companies like Hans Grohe or Grohe, Delta Faucets, and other bathroom, as well as Behr Paints, massive paint company, almost like Dulux in the UK, for example. So to be able to work in that kind of environment in the UK, but have the ability and exposure to the US, which we did. I was able to travel over to the US and to go to work with Masco Bath, Delta Faucets, a Chicago design firm at the time who were working for the faucet company, to help look at how do we save water as well. New technology for these little chips that you used to get in, I think you still get them in car windscreen wipers, but taking those little chips to put in shower handsets so that how it sprays was more directional, but actually aerated it at the same time, but developing new products with them so we could integrate them into the UK market with our own products into our own handsets. Things like that were really exciting to then be able to be exposed to really early on in my career, so that then I could kind of take that forward and see how could we look at the innovation in our company in the UK. And that's kind of, I was given the opportunity to do that really at Bristan and help look at what it is that we need to do and actually look at that whole front end innovation and how do we innovate, not just go buy products from Italy or China and redesign them a little bit, but how do we actually create some technology inside, whether it's from the brassware and how the water flows, or how do you actually create then eventually digital showers that we started to develop before I actually moved on from there. But even in that environment, I had a great engineering manager who I actually met up with earlier this year.
Oh, wonderful.
10 plus years later. And actually to kind of reminisce on that time, he allowed me to kind of be more free in my role as a design engineer and be a little bit more entrepreneurial. And he actually mentioned that earlier this year, said you always had that kind of entrepreneurial bit to you, so I let you do it. And actually letting
That's
me
wonderful.
do it meant there were other benefits to the business, and to have managers like that to be able to see that is incredibly valuable, so that actually you can then go and try stuff rather than just following these set rules that someone else or SOPs which are important, but instead of having to just follow them rigidly, is being able to then ask questions, be critical about them and say, oh, why am I doing that? Or why can't we do it this way? So that really got me into that mindset of actually, I'm not just a design engineer to design and create lovely products or products that work, like we talked about a minute ago, but actually there's more to it. There's that impact of the product and the business and to us as people at the same time.
That's wonderful. I think it's one of the hardest things when you're, especially when you get going into management. It's one of the hardest lessons to learn is to let people do them. Kind of giving people the space to grow and space to try things and do things their way. I think it's very common kind of for managers to want to control, and like you say, you've got standard operating procedure, you want to kind of you've got to do it this way, or this is how we do things. So for someone to have the kind of the managerial maturity, I suppose, to give you that space and freedom and acknowledge that you've got that entrepreneurship about you, and actually give them a bit of space to go and explore, we could get great things. But there's still rules and conditions around that, but that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. But knowing what those are and what the limits are. I think even a good example, even whilst I was at Bristan, was one of those good examples was nobody else wanted to. I think inclusive design was starting to become very, I'd say it was obviously existing already, but becoming popularized. So obviously the larger companies, I think, we need to do something about this and we need to incorporate it. But nobody wanted to manage the inclusive design range of products. I stuck my hand up. And I did.
Awesome.
And I wasn't a product manager, but at the time, yes, there was all these other products that we needed to manage, which then meant I worked with occupational therapists, worked with Coventry University with their health design tech department, and actually developed a fast fill, fast empty walk-in bath, which we patented. And that was my first exposure to like patenting and having a name on invention at the time as well. And because of those little interactions meant that something bigger has come off the back.
And I imagine did you have to pitch that to senior stakeholders as well? Because if it's a new category or it's maybe quite a niche
I think it was already
well.
identified that they wanted to do something about it, but nobody was really going to drive it. And that's the thing. If you're just having those type of things as add-ons, it's never going to succeed. And actually, you need an advocate, a champion to kind of drive those initiatives or projects forward. And I was interested in it anyway, from a design perspective, and I always have. And so it made sense. Let me look after it, because also, rather than someone speccing a product that they don't really know why it's been developed like that, why not have someone who knows why it's been done like that, or could actually ask more informed, critical questions to the manufacturer or whoever's supplying it? Well, could we do this? Could we have it like this? Because actually we need the diameter to be a certain size or length, etc.
But no, that's pretty. I mean, yeah, wonderful exposure. So kind of early on in your career, and then you then moved on to LA Design. You were there for 6.5 years. Took us through kind of how that opportunity came about, and then kind of the biggest challenges, I suppose, from transitioning from in-house with a multinational business through to a relatively small but very highly respected design consultancy. So yeah, how did the opportunity come about?
So I don't know, what was I at Bristan, 3 years or something, 3 plus years. I guess it's that itch. I don't know the length of time is now when people are in a job, but I was doing well at Bristan. But I think you get to that point of, I'm just designing the same type of things or in that same industry, or the taps and showers in the bathroom world. And as a designer or engineer or design engineer, you always have this kind of ambition to think, I want to go to work in a design consultancy. You have this kind of glamorous kind of vision of it when you're at school or when you're at uni. And so it's like, well, this opportunity came up. I saw it advertised. Let's go for it. Why not? It was local or closer as well to home at the time. Try it, apply for it, and see what happens. And actually have that ability potentially to work on a myriad of different projects and different industries rather than just projects. But so hopefully you have greater exposure to the type of industries and products that I could design and get involved in. And so, went for it, got it. And it was a good 6.5 years, lots of different projects to get involved in. So great company to work for.
How did you cope with, or was there any kind of adjustment period from going in-house to that small company? And how did you find that?
Trying to reflect back now, I think quite different, really, because yes, I was part of a big corporation, but fortunately, we still had our small teams, if you like, at Bristan. So you still had that kind of almost like, if you like, family kind of size group and the community you had behind that. But moving into the consultancy, it just seemed more pressure because it was smaller. It felt, wow, I'm here. Am I good enough? Should I be here? Because if the team is smaller, everybody needs to be good at what they're doing, right? If you're in a bigger organization, some things other people could pick up the slack or things could be hidden. And you kind of think, well, I'm here for a reason. So they must have thought there was something good about about me. But there's that imposter syndrome element. But you are working directly with the directors, the owners of the business, as well as the other designers who've been there for most of their career.
Yeah.
I think initially it was a bit stressful, a bit pressure, but me being me, I've just got to do me. I've just got to ask if I don't know. I've got to share what I do know. And I think that helped me a lot, because rather than pretending I knew how to do everything, I didn't. So I was honest, and I think that's how I was there for so long, because we built a great relationship of honesty and trust. And everybody in a smaller team has the ability to do certain things others don't, hopefully. And that's why you build a team like that, because you don't want everybody to be the same.
Absolutely. I think it's obviously the guys that you were joining, the business has been going on a long time, hasn't it? So yeah, you've got a lot of experience in there, and they're probably looking at you coming in as the rookie to consultancy and going, yeah, he's going to go through some pain for a little while, but we've all been there and it's natural, You're damn right. Yeah. Ask questions, be curious. Kind of, if you don't know, stick your hand up and and ask. And I think that's how you get on. So yeah, right at the beginning of the podcast when we first started, I interviewed Jeffrey Baldwin, and he's like ex-IDEO and IDEO.org. He's got his own business, and he said something along the lines of, that imposter syndrome thing, it's natural, but you just got to realize when you start a new role, whether it be with a new company, a new industry, or you step up from midweight to senior, you're supposed to be rubbish. It's natural because it's a new job, you're learning. So just embrace that and ask questions and be curious, and it will be fine.
Yeah.
And you're a good example of that. So no, that's awesome. On reflection, obviously going from in-house to consultancy, is there anything in the way of advice you might give to people who are maybe at similar stage to where you were at Bristan, thinking the romanticizing kind of design consultancy? They want to really get into it, because you are right, everyone does it. What was it that made you stand out, do you think, on reflection? Or what advice could you give to younger designers and engineers that can help them stand out and kind of make that leap?
I think it's don't just do design. Don't just learn design skills or engineering skills. I think in this scenario, I had other interests. I had other, like the inclusive design side of things, but also get a hobby, get out there, do something else that's got nothing to do with design or engineering, because that's, I think, where you're going to learn a lot more about the world. And then you can apply your design skills and your engineering skills and problem solving skills to that environment. And I think when you start to do that, you then realize where you're adding greater value without you realizing it. And you get that passion side of it as well. And you can then influence more. You can work better, I think, with other people because you have other knowledge that is not just about, say, in this example, the bathroom industry, for example, or whatever. I have rowed for a long time. I know we talked about Floatrower earlier, but I was already rowing at that time. So I had other things. I was doing other things. I was competing, etc. But I already knew about water, how water flowed, but from a technical side of things with rowing on it, not how, but also that translated across to how it flowed within pipes as well as taps and other things. And you don't realize that there are obviously relations between it because it's water, but what you see and what you learn in other environments can easily be translated across in a different context. So I think one of the main advices I would say is get yourself out there, expose yourself to as many different scenarios and environments as possible and cultures. I think that's one thing with the consultancy side, is that I think they already saw that I had other experiences that, skills are skills. You can teach skills, but you can't teach a person to always be a nice person, or you can't change their culture, right? And those are things that are born and bred into you. Yeah, I think
difficult to get across on an application. One thing I recommend everyone do is include those hobbies and interests and those extracurricular activities on your CV or your resume, because they do make a difference. I think so many people are precious about getting their CV down to one page, and quite often it's at the expense of the stuff that might give you an edge, might give you an opportunity to build rapport, might give you an opportunity for the interviewer to ask questions that are going to be relevant. And yeah, most designers and engineers that I speak to are genuinely passionate about what they do, and it's reflected in what they do when they're not at work. But many of them don't talk about what they do outside of work because it's about the job. But it really isn't, is it? It's a vocation. So,
but I think another thing there, Chris, is that it is a job, but you want to enjoy doing that job, and also it's bringing more to it than you could have a whole bunch of skill sets that everybody has. But what, like you were saying, what makes you stand out? What makes you different? Whereas if you are putting those hobbies down, those other interests, or where you like to travel or whatever, and you've exposed to other cultures, and whoever's reading those CVs, this is obviously from your world as well, is that other person might resonate with you compared to the other person, right? If you're going into a shop to look at different products and they've got the same features, but one of them, the brand, maybe has an association with you and how the business and how you think as a person, or how you want to live, you'll buy that one. And it's a similar thing, not the same, to how we might kind of make decisions about TVs when you can't see and meet the person.
Massively. It's, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the skill set and the experience is one thing, but it's the person that you're hiring, and it's the person that you're going to be sat next to for 40 plus hours a week. So if you can see that there may be mutual interest, that, yeah, this guy's into rowing. I love rowing. Worst case scenario, I want to have a conversation with him about rowing. So let's get an interview booked. And then you're in the room, you're in the conversation. Yeah, that's awesome. I want to talk about achievements then at LA Design. I'm guessing kind of your most memorable one would be the inception of Floatrower, but you would have worked on all sorts of different things there. But yeah, tell us how a Floatrower came about.
How did Floatrower come about? So I think I mentioned a minute ago, I've rowed since I was at uni. One of those things are what sports do you take up? I was like, let me try that. So I did. So when I was 18, I was like, okay, I've been rowing since. And so former Milton Keynes rowing club captain, I've got the top boat there, an Elite Carbon 8 named after my eldest daughter. So I'm very heavy in that world. And so when I was at LA Design, yes, we've designed a myriad of different products, EV charging posts and wall-mounted posts, lab equipment, etc. But then, so Anthony Hamilton, Lewis Hamilton's dad, came into the office one day with an idea to develop an F1 driver training product. Oh, cool, we'll get onto this. And obviously my interest is sport as well and rowing. So you've still got those things. And like I was saying a minute ago, you kind of connect those two together. So I was pulled into that project straight away. And yes, there was already products out there on the market, but he didn't know yet. So we did that work. So we didn't actually develop that product any further, really, because Ferrari already had one. So we then started looking at other sports as well. We did a couple of things for go-karting. We then did a fairing, it's called an info wing, we called it, that goes behind the driver's head with the cameras in. But we put LED displays on there, so you knew exactly what tyres and what position the drivers are on if you're driving on the track. And we started looking at other sports as well and just sharing ideas. So we had a football product that we started to develop as well, and I shared this idea about the rowing machine. And what if we could take that feeling or that sensation of being on the water onto the dry land? And so I shared that idea in a meeting where we were talking about other things. I like that. Let's do something about it. Let's try it. And I think he was going to the gym a lot. And obviously he could see that the F1 side of things, they were all using this equipment for fitness, but it looked boring, right? It's just going back and forth. And from his mind was like, well, okay, that sounds a bit more fun, a bit more interesting than just going back and forward. So we started to then develop the rigs. How do we actually make it as close as possible? And a lot of the first stages of those was literally making crude, rudimentary rigs and testing different ways that we could make the whole thing float and roll. And basically testing those out in isolation and to see what was the best feeling. And I think it's all about the feeling with those type of things. And however you want to engineer it or design it, it could be the most basic principles, the mechanisms that actually get the right feeling to you as a person when you're sitting on the machine. So that's how the idea came up. And we just grew it from there at the consultancy initially as a project.
And that was Lewis Hamilton's dad still involved at that stage, or is this just kind of been? He was still kind of shareholder?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So he owned it at the time, and obviously I always raise this point. I was employed at the time when I came up with the idea, so I didn't own any of the intellectual property. So it's always one of the things to make clear to people as well, is that, if you're inventing something, where are you doing it, how are you doing it, and who's involved, if you want to be able to kind of utilize that intellectual property in the future. But at the time, it was the right thing to do. We developed it. We then got it to the first proof of concept, and we built the whole thing, got it working, but it still wasn't quite right, and it was expensive. And we then got Steve Redgrave. We managed to reach out to Steve Redgrave. Some listeners might not know who he is, but I hope a lot will. A 5 times gold medalist for GB rowing. He obviously, one of these figures would obviously get contacted quite a lot about that kind of product specific, very niche market really for rowing. But I think because we had the foot in the door already with the name, with Anthony's name, to be able to kind of say, look, I'm developing a new rowing machine. Do you want to come have a look and see if you want to get involved? Basically was the question. And he did. His parking overran in the car park out the front of LA Design. It stayed a lot longer than he intended. which is a good sign.
Yeah.
And yeah, we had follow-up conversations after that to see how could we develop it with him, to also get his feedback from years and years of experience. And now at the time he was coaching and being a performance director in one of the national clubs. And to get names like that involved, from my perspective, like as a grower as well as designer, it's like, wow, this is.
You're starstruck, weren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
You have to kind of take a moment, just deep breaths, calm down. He's just a person.
Yeah, he's just a little man, but he's just blocking out the sun in front of him as he walks past.
Oh, that's amazing. So when did it kind of separate then, or actually kind of spin out from LA Design, and how was that transition for you? Because am I right in thinking you went full time with Floatrower then?
Yeah, so things were changing at LA Design anyway, with the directorships and ownerships and things like that. So things were changing, and it just felt right, because we got to a point where, because I was so heavily involved in the project, I was doing some other projects as well at the same time, because it was a project, right? But because I was passionate about it, I was adding more to it. Go back to what we said earlier, actually, is that you're putting more into it than what you're probably getting paid for, your time allows. I set up the social media, I set up the website, I set up everything when it wasn't needed at the time, but it was like, you've got to do it, because if this needs to be a success, you haven't got anybody else to do it, so I'll help you do it. And it got to that point where, right, we need to go do something about it. So obviously me and Anthony were talking about is, let's go do it. Like, you come work for me, and then we'll go launch this into I think at the time he probably said a multi-billion-dollar business or something. And I was like, oh wow, I'd obviously been enticed by this, but it's very risky at the time, because I've gone from, I was been at LA Design for like 6.5 years, and moving on, it's like, okay, this is a big deal. I love the product. It's like one of my babies, if you like. And my wife used to be in HR, and so obviously got some good feedback from her to how I should approach this. And I managed to obviously get myself a 12-month agreement contract in place to make sure I had at least 12 months to see, rather than I'll leave my full-time employed job to go for a month and say, oh no, I'm not interested in it anymore. Yeah. So it's having that security. So I managed to put all of that in place, which made it a little bit more comfortable for me, as well as at home as well, really importantly, because it's a big risk to take from a monetary perspective, because you still got to put food on the table. So yeah, in 2018, February, March time, I left LA Design and then started full-time Floatrower. Got everything taken over from LA Design to almost like a garage warehouse unit that we had in Welland Garden City, and went from there to start developing the next versions.
I'm interrupting this episode to share some exciting things happening around Whyte Design. At the core of this podcast are the incredible design journeys my guests have been on and where they're heading. And these journeys stem from the relationships they build, the communities they're part of, and the amazing achievements that come from collaboration. So beyond the podcast, we're hosting regular online huddles and quarterly meetups in the UK, with plans underway for an annual gathering in the US. We're also running hands-on workshops both in person at makerspaces and online to connect and inspire people in physical product development. So if you'd like to join us or stay in the loop about upcoming events, sign up at teamkodu.com/events or click the link in the show notes. Now, back to the episode.
Awesome. So that's great. I've got to say, there's something to be said about kind of risk taking and starting a venture when you're a little bit older. You've got family to consider. I think I know a lot of people have started businesses when they've got more life commitments, and I think it might seem more risky. It might seem more like you've got more on the line, but actually that sharpens the mind quite a lot. It keeps you driven. I think had I started my business personally in my 20s, I don't think I'd approached it in the same way. I don't think I'd been as strategic about my approach. I think and I'm not sure whether I would have succeeded, because I've learned a lot having been working other businesses and having a family, having a mortgage, having life. Life is expensive. You got to make sure that everything's absolutely right and set up in the right way. So I think there's there's something to be said about doing it a little bit later. Saying that you weren't that old, were you really, in the grand scheme of things when you started?
It's still old, Chris.
yeah. No, you mean both. So let's move on then to where you are now. Then, so you're still involved in Floatrower, I presume.
Yeah, no. So I think that project that came to an end really, but we developed it to we build we did the proof of concept, obviously, like I said, at LA Design. We made the whole thing float and roll. It felt great. And then we started to develop it further with, software and displays. The market was changing at the time as well. So becoming more interactive, so we ended up putting a 15.6-inch display on the front of it. And we hadn't seen anyone else do that yet. And then eventually others came out, as people would have seen during the pandemic. And obviously the fitness world went crazy at the time of the home fitness market.
You have to gamify everything, don't you? If you haven't got a screen, you're not selling it.
Exactly. But when I actually developed it, was not just about the physical feeling of it, but also the mental side. Because as a rower and a coach, I'm a qualified British rowing coach as well, which helped because I then knew the technical side of what it is that we wanted to try and achieve. So whilst I developed it, was also thinking back to what does it feel like for me to row on the water? And it's a very meditative feeling. So how do I get that on the machine rather than it being boring and like rowing back and forward and just looking at a number if you know what it means? Or if you're a rower, it's fine because you know what you're trying to achieve. But for everybody else, when you hear it, it's a torture machine or it's a boring thing, or you use it for a warm-up for a couple of minutes before you go do your proper workout. Like, well, how do we change that narrative? What we basically did with the display was become more interactive. And because it moved, how do we represent that on the digital surface on the software side of things as well? So the whole thing, almost like an airplane, what do you call it, the level, it rolled. And because the machine rolled side to side, obviously you're activating more muscles, but also you were looking at the degree of rotation. And the logo that we designed actually rolled with it. So it looked like a boat as well as it was moving. So there was more things for people to think about and consider and engage with, rather than just going back and forward. And then because the realism of it as well was different independent resistance mechanisms. So they were separate from one another, separate handles. So it rolled, floated, and separate handles, so you could steer the boat.
Okay.
So that was quite innovative in that you could put different pressure, a different amount of power through each side, so you could effectively steer the boat. And so we created a screen. I'm swiping across on here on the screen for some reason. You swiped across on the display to get to the trajectory screen. So it showed your wake as you rowed. So you could see whether you're actually rowing straight or not. And the whole idea of that was, yes, you could gamify and start creating navigation and directions and steer around things. But also from an elite perspective or a performance side, you want to row straight if you're going on the Olympics and you're rowing on a straight course.
Oh, yeah.
And so you don't want to be doing a 2K course and actually having done 2,050 meters because you've been going down the course like snake. Or rowing into the others, and get disqualified. So it's a way of
spectator sport, but not so much fun for the competitors.
Yeah, exactly. So how do we then kind of use that as a more of a fun thing for more people? Then put videos on it, and not just put numbers on it, but your stereotypical gym goer who might go on it might not care about those numbers. But actually, if they're looking at a river scene and they're rowing down the river, and in one workout they get to the bridge, but the next workout, they realize they've gone through the bridge. And it was the same time. Mentally, they know they've gone further and they've done, I've improved, but in a way that they understood it rather than
like Zwift for rowing. And, again, it's like gamification. It's like wanting to do a little bit better, getting to the bridge quicker than last time. That's awesome.
And that's kind of what we started to look at, and then connecting the machines together, like the Zwift scenario where you could race against each other as well. And that's where it was going to get fun. But we hadn't developed that yet. That was the plan. So we got it all the way through to launching the pre-production units into David Lloyd clubs in 2021. Off the back of the pandemic, they wanted, when people could go back into the gyms, everyone wanted to go back into that social environment and get fit again, etc.
Yeah.
An interesting insight from them was that all of these new members are basically is a queue of people potentially to cancel in 12 months' time. And how do they retain them and retain the members? So they needed something more innovative. And with the Olympics being moved as well, we aligned it with the launch of the Olympics finishing, us going into David Lloyd clubs and launching this new product, which is great. And it wasn't just, and I think this is an important thing from a designer's perspective, and design is, we're not just designing the amazing product like we just talked about, but how do you integrate it into their business? How do you integrate your product and learn about their business so that the product succeeds within their organization? And basically that's what I did, was we got it into 4 different clubs, taught over 25 fitness professionals at the clubs, whether they're the managers or the PTs or the gym floor staff, how to use the machine. How could they then create workouts from it themselves? How could they then do gym floor classes, deliver those, and members book it on their app?
Yeah.
So we developed all of that and integrated it into their app so that people could book onto the sessions. And they actually got sessions off the back of it. So what's the added value that they're getting off the back of just buying this product?
Fantastic.
So all of
return
those
on investment, isn't it? Really? And that's incredible. So talk us through Inond then. So that looks like it overlaps. So you were running Inond, was Inond set up to facilitate Floatrower? Talk us through kind of how that came about.
Yes. Floatrower wasn't obviously a business yet. So I then set up Inond to contract.
Okay.
On paper, right? And to contract and do some other bits there. So that was just the vehicle, if you like. And so by the time, I think it was 2022, Floatrower was coming to an end, if you like. I didn't want to pursue the project anymore. So it's a real shame because it was ready to go. I'd got it all the way. I'd built the team up behind us, from the software team, the electronics, the designers. I was doing less design work, if you like, at the time, because I was doing more of that kind of front and sales side of things, as well as almost like being the face and being on the videos. If you Google it, you'll find my face all over it. But I don't know if it's a good thing or not. But
it's good practice for selling.
It's great practice if you know the product enough. But actually, and that's another thing, right? Even from an engineering perspective, we can talk technically about something so well, but how does Bob or Martha over there know what you're talking about? They don't know. How do you put it in a language they actually understand, that they will get and want to buy your product? And I think that is an incredibly powerful thing from a storytelling as well as narrative of communicating what's in your head to other people's heads, because you don't know how they're looking at things or how they perceive the world, is that put it into as layman terms as possible that still sounds amazing, right?
So storytelling, and I mean,
what happened with Inond, wasn't it?
Yeah, but as you said, you kind of it initially started as a vehicle to contract, and I think a lot of people resonate with that. A lot of people kind of start a consulting business with a view to do a 40-hour plus a week contract, but they really want to turn it into more of a serious kind of design consultancy, which I guess is where you're at now, more so than being an individual contractor. So at what point did that change, and was that an active kind of or proactive kind of decision on your part to push that? There's a third question in there as well. What's the kind of the biggest challenge from going to being like an hourly or a daily paid contractor through to now being seen as a consultant?
Yeah. So I think it wasn't a choice at the time, really. And I think, well, like I was mentioning, we built the team up behind Floatrower, and that was coming to an end because they didn't want to continue the project, if you like, and move it forward to the next stage of mass manufacturing, which we got it all the way up to ready to go, almost ready to press the button. Worked out all the financials, had pre-orders as well through David Lloyd clubs, demoed it at Pure Gym, and that would have been amazing if we got it into there. Right, that would have been it. I wouldn't be on this podcast. I'd be out there selling machines and stuff. But you kind of mourn that project already because I was wearing all the hats, running everything and building the team behind us. You already knew it was starting to stop and slow down. And so I'd already mourned that project by the time it actually stopped. We even demoed it at the Excel because we'd already committed to it, etc. And it was amazing. And it's so good to get that exposure. And the reason I share this now is because had I not done all of those things, I wouldn't be where I am right now. And I wouldn't be what I'm doing or what I'm saying or how I'm saying things, how I'm working with new clients and developing a couple of other products that we're hopefully going to do ourselves as well. So by the end of 2022, the project basically came to an end. Obviously, I took a gap mentally.
Yeah. So why didn't they? Why didn't they? Because you got so close to launch. Was it just the financial cost of manufacturing the thing?
No, I think I had conversation during the pandemic. You know, I was working in my home office right now, and I remember being in here talking to VCs in America at the time, and I think it was a case of the risk involved, but also sharing that risk, and do they want to do that for the future? I think is the main thing. And I think that's another thing for people, particularly startups, when you're looking at investors and investment opportunities, is it's not just about the money. It's also about the investor and the people who want to be involved. Is how much do they want to be involved? When do they want to get involved? But also, when is there sometimes jump off point? And I think even from an investor's perspective, if investors listen or want some feedback as well, is that how much do you want to be involved in a project before you stop getting involved so much or you step back a bit? Because you might want to think it might be fun, but when it becomes serious, like where we're talking 5 million plus over the next 3 years, it's a big product. You've got to be in the game, but also build up the team, which we were doing. We were building up the steering committee, which was then going to turn into the board, etc., to run the business. I think that's it. I don't think it was as fun anymore, with all due respect. And actually, I think if we built the bigger, better infrastructure behind that could have been something different. But that's something we learned, though, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's 2022 was kind of. It was the year that things turned from the post-COVID bounce back and boom to the reality check of, okay, now things have reset, haven't they? Towards the back end of that year anyway. And it was a lot harder to get money out of investors. It was a lot harder to get money out of consumers.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of businesses were taken by surprise, really, and especially in service-based industries like recruitment or design, there was a lot of complacency at that time. It's like things were brilliant kind of going into 22 and for much of 22. And then all of a sudden it's like the phone stops ringing or kind of the orders stop coming in. You're like, what's going on? We've got to sell again, but we've got to build that momentum back up, and that takes time. And yeah, it was rough, and we're still getting through that now. But
that is a big element of it as well.
Yeah.
But obviously, you don't go into that much detail with someone, and so actually, that is a massive element. Like you're saying, is do you want to commit to this? Do you want to sign your name to this for the next 3 years when you don't know what's happening in the market, depending where the investments are to use that funds?
Absolutely. But like you say, we learn from these things. Had I not gone through the back end of 22 and much of 23, I'd have been a very different person now, and I may not have even started my own business. And I dare say things would have been different for you. So
yeah, and I think even there is where that where that did stop was I took that gap, I took that break, went to Thailand to go see family because we hadn't seen them in a long time as well because of the pandemic. Took a nice long break. Was already starting to contract with an old friend on a project, just a one-off thing. Then realised I was still doing everything. Oh, you should do this, we should do this, we should look into this, we need to plan for this in the future. And I think that really helped open my eyes in the beginning of 2023 was actually, this isn't just designing a product. It's not just me designing something and giving it back to the other person or them telling me what they want. I'm curating this. I'm defining what they need and what they want and what we should do. And that's where the product realization thing came about, or the name. And going back before that was then realizing, do I do my own thing, or do I go get a job? Do I just go get a job? I had a few conversations with a consultancy in London, and who I did a little bit of work with, or they did a little bit for Floatrower, and they were great in that. I remember speaking to one of them, and it's like, it seems like you've still got an itch to scratch, Ben. And they knew me quite well. And I was like, oh, I do actually. Like, rather than go work for someone else, is that it sounds and seems like you want to go do your own thing, like you were for Floatrower for the last 4 years. So I was like, okay, I think I do. And my wife, who, like I said, used to be in HR. She's now a hairdresser, not just a hairdresser, hair salon owner and wellness center owner. So knows her stuff from the business side, and said, I don't think you're employable anymore. I was like, what do you mean?
How dare you?
What do you mean? Don't be so rude. But more to the fact that I don't think you could go work, you should or could or want to go work for someone else. It seems like you want to go do your own thing and build your own business. And we've been together for a long time since uni, and you've always said you wanted to have your own agency or consultancy. So let's do it. Let's just try it now. And I think that backing as well, like you were saying earlier, from home. Now we're like 4.5 years further than the Floatrower example when we left LA Design. This was even more risky. Is that I didn't have a contract that I could have signed. I've got to go out there and start building my own thing and find my new clients from nothing, effectively. So without that kind of confirmation, I was like, okay, just go do it. Just go do it. And the team I'd built up behind Floatrower all basically turned around to me afterwards and said, we'll carry on working on the next projects with you. And to have those kind of different things come in at the same time, I was like, what I was doing and building was right. Let's go try and do it again. But for other people and maybe some of our own products.
Yeah. So tell us about Inond now then, in terms of kind of, if you can, I guess, elevator pitch time, to potential customers or people that might want to join your business at some point. What is it Inond? What does it mean to customers? What is your kind of value proposition?
So where I've summarized it all now is that we're helping people get their ideas out of their heads and into their hands. And that helps summarize that product realization standpoint. So we're helping people get their ideas all the way through to setting up the manufacturing, the supply chain, and everything in between, whether it's the product compliance, the intellectual property, the legal side, the R&D side as well, which is incredibly important for the businesses as well. But also with, where I was saying the suppliers and the manufacturing, is making sure that we're identifying the right routes for that. One element we're doing now and we're building is the financial side of it, which we did as well for Floatrower, was looking at what the next 3 to 5 years or 3 years would look like, and how do you then work that out, forecast for it, but also from a financial perspective, but also from a manufacturing perspective, looking at the quantities that you're hoping to manufacture for in the future. How do we scale? How do we grow from that? One of the main things that we do now as well is front loading the feasibility and the viability. Yes, we look at ideas, desirability, feasibility and viability, but we front load a lot of that, the feasibility and viability, particularly to help prove and disprove projects before we get too far. And I've been there in the past where even the corporate world, where you think everybody knows what they should be doing, but lots of stuff is done in silos. And how do we get rid of those silos? How do we get them to communicate effectively across all the channels, across the departments and the different stages within a massive product development process? So it's kind of communicating, clearing that whole process up, but making sure that where we are proving or disproving projects, we're not wasting all those resources. And where I say about front loading them, in the past where you've got to kind of product compliance testing, and there might have been someone saying, oh, what? We need to do that? Well, yeah, you do, but it hadn't been budgeted for. And maybe they're too far down the line that they need to, because they've already invested so much. But how do you then front load a lot of this in the early stages, and also help people understand what it is they're expecting to do or expect of them and the project, timescale and investment, to actually get the product to market, rather than thinking, oh, I've got 10K, I'm going to get this to John Lewis or wherever, right? And dollar signs or pound signs in their eyes.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of money until you start spending it on product development, because it goes very, very quickly, doesn't it? So it's responsible kind of product development consultancy by the sounds of it. You're not just kind of, I think a lot of consultancies can be criticised for just taking on projects without kind of looking at the outcome or the impact on the business. Let's actually engage. Let's consult. With the client. Yeah,
it's consulting. It's consulting and advising as well. I think there is a difference. Is that I have experience, and you kind of reflect back and think, I do have experience. Going back to that imposter syndrome thing right at the beginning was. Yeah. I do know what I'm talking about. I've been there. I've lived it. I've talked to all these different people, and I've built these other things. So share that with other people so that they can hear it from you, and be honest and be truthful. I think that's the main thing. Is I like to always think there's optimism, And I'm a very optimistic person. I'm that kind of guy who's very happy. You talk to me, I'm like, yeah, we can. But then I'm realistic as well. There's optimism and realism. And some people might not like it, but to be matter of fact about things is really important, to know what to expect in the future and be open and honest about what the intentions are with the product, the project, as well as, say, for example, I think we briefly talked about it at one point, was jumping on discovery calls with people who have these amazing ideas, but they're saying, how much? I was like, well, I don't know. What do you want us to do? What is it you're actually wanting to do? Whereas they've, they can see that they've got the pound signs in their eyes thinking, make so much from this. And already their incentive there is that they're just going to make loads of money. But there needs to be a collaborative approach to the projects. Is, from a consulting perspective, is the person you're working with hopefully is the person or the company who are going to be the ones who are selling and driving that business forward when you're not involved anymore. And at the beginning, if they're not that kind of person, then do you really want to be working with them? Have they got everything aligned properly in order to actually make it a good project? Or is it going to be hard work?
Yeah. That discovery element is
and actually developing the project, or are you taking on too much based on what it is that you're supposed to be delivering?
Massively, and that discovery kind of element of the conversation is so crucial in whatever line of consulting you're in. Like I do it the same with prospects, and it just saves a lot of running around and wasted time, really, doesn't it? Because it just aligns everyone. What you just said there as well, it kind of ties nicely into something else I wanted to talk about, kind of putting yourself out there and realizing you do have expertise, you do have experience, you do have a credible kind of voice in design in this industry, and you're very active on LinkedIn, Ben. Is that talk us through kind of your strategy there, or kind of is there a strategy, or is it just talk us about LinkedIn or your content?
Do as I say, not do as I do, right? So initially there wasn't really a strategy, I'm going to be honest, because even when we go back, like we were talking about a minute ago, was you've got to put yourself out there. And when you're trying to, I didn't have that contract to jump straight into. I've got to find some new people. And I didn't do the thing that I probably should have done when I started, was reach out to my friends, family, and everybody else, say, hey, I'm doing this now. Do you know anybody that needs any of this services or requirements that we could help with? I didn't do that. And I'm thinking, I should have done. And at the time, I was thinking, I've got to build this all by myself. Probably a lot of ego in there as well, Chris, thinking, I can build this myself. I can get my clients. So it's a need and a want scenario, really. I needed to do it to raise awareness. And I kind of wanted to do it as well, because you kind of see everything online now. You think, that sounds really exciting. And you get that kind of exposure. And actually, well, let's build some credibility behind me, rather than always being behind another company, another organization, or a product like Floatrower, for example. It was all about Floatrower. It wasn't about what I knew about how to develop Floatrower or rowing, for example. So, I basically started, I think it was May 2023, I think, when it started to really kick off, where one way I was then thinking, how do I build awareness about Inond and what we did at Floatrower? And that kind of narrative changed a bit, where Floatrower became a project of Inond rather than almost like co-founding and doing it all. Entered awards as well was one thing. So, well, we never really put anything through for that into business awards or innovation awards. So I did. And I was then down as Engineering Innovator of the Year finalist at the Innovation Awards 2023. We got to shortlisted for the Innovation of the Year as well. And then I was like, okay, I've got something to talk about. I think I entered into like local SME business awards as well. I was like, okay, finalist for that too. I'm obviously doing something that people don't know about or find interesting. So I started sharing it. And I think I did my first like business expo locally that week as well, thinking, I'm just going to build some local awareness about who I am, what I am, because there's nobody around here doing this of what I'm doing. And so that week I had something to talk about every day. So I shared it. So I did. I was like, wow, I'm getting lots of engagement here. Let me see if I carry on starting to talk about things. And so I started to just share what was happening in my journey from a business perspective, not so much design at the time, because, I had one project, but you can't talk about those. And that's the main thing with what we do, right? We've got NDAs or we've got confidentiality agreements, etc., that we can't share or show anything because it hasn't been patented yet, or we haven't gone through a certain gate. And so how do you then start to share about what it is you're building? And I think even from my perspective particularly, I'm sure there'll be lots of people who resonate, is that you don't want to show anything until it's perfect and it's finished. And I'm definitely that person of not showing those detail parts, but only showing the big wins. Yeah. But actually, right, I'm building this now by myself. Like, this was 18 months ago. I need to start shouting about these small wins. And then I started to do it. And people cared. I think that's the main thing that happened, was that actually people cared what I was sharing. And they engaged with it. They commented. They reached out. I was like, wow, people actually are interested in this. Until I actually did it, I didn't think everybody knows this. They don't care about this thing or this expo or this award until I've actually won it. I didn't win it, but people still cared that I got to the final. Right? And I think even there, so I had more to start to share and talk about. So I started to do it more about the entrepreneurial journey, also the connection between family life and building a business, and elements of design in there as well. So there's always that element of a design engineering and sharing snippets, but it wasn't just heavy, full on 5 days a week of design or showing off what we've developed in the past. So it started to build a nice kind of authenticity behind what I was sharing. And what I found was that people were resonating with that. And I even had other people reach out to me who, I was sharing, I'm a dad of 3, small kids, 2 years in between them. So we've got, we've been busy, but we wanted that. We wanted that kind of noise and everything else with the kids. And we were sharing this, I think, I was involved in a thing called Dad Ventures a couple of years ago, where it was helping to raise the awareness of fatherhood and men and parents. It's not just mums, it's, everything else that we do as fathers. But actually, I started to share more about that. And I had an engineer reach out to me asking if he had any opportunities. And we jumped on this call. He was basically sharing his portfolio with me. Yeah. I didn't realize this was an interview, and I basically said to him that, why did you reach out? And he said, I saw you were a dad and you were designing and engineering and this, and I thought it'd be great to kind of connect and see if you need any support with your projects and your clients. We ended up speaking for another 40 minutes about fatherhood and parenting and that, and building, like we were saying earlier, the person, that person behind it. And that was fantastic. And then I realized that, okay, people are resonating with my story and my journey. This is fantastic. Carry on. So I think it was just a need and a want scenario, sharing those small wins which actually people cared about. And what actually happened was that I've noticed over the last, say, 12, 18 months is that even a lot of my past connections or colleagues were all seeing it, engaging with it. Yeah. You then go to a, I don't know, like the NEC or Excel, go to a show or an event or something, and ex-colleagues were, I keep seeing all your stuff. I keep seeing all your stuff on LinkedIn. They haven't engaged with it. I didn't know they did. They're stalking or lurking or whatever you want to call them. But they then saw me. And so I was then front of mind for them. And I think that's the most important thing, is that because I was sharing this, whether it was about specifically design or not, it was about the journey, but they also knew that what we did. I was front of mind for them when they next saw me, as well as hopefully when they were talking to someone else about a new product or product development, they hopefully will think of me.
That's that's probably the most powerful thing about it, I think, is the people that don't engage but are following. And you're right, you're front of mind. Those will quite often turn into the most kind of exciting and potentially lucrative kind of opportunities as well. Yeah. But I think a lot of people are put off from following a content strategy, following a LinkedIn strategy, because there isn't usually a quick win. Some people might post one thing, it goes viral and they get a win from it, but it's a long it's a long play. It's something that compounds, and like you say, you're building this awareness, this kind of you stay in front of mind, and people feel like they know you. I was at an event a few weeks ago, and people were coming up to me, and I'd never spoken to them before. I'd said, "Chris, I've been following you and stuff. I feel like I know you." It's like, and it's a great kind of icebreaker. It's like, it makes networking events really, really easy for me now. But yeah, it's stunning. Can you kind of track any business that you've won from your kind of LinkedIn endeavors?
Yeah. Also, before you go to that, I think it feels a bit weird though sometimes, doesn't it? When people reach out to you and you don't need to do your backstory or introduce yourself. They already know it, and it's like, this is a bit strange.
So, I'm a recruiter, right? Yeah.
But I think for me anyway, from the business side of thing is also, yes, there's been two that I know of so far. One was that exact example that he'd contacted through the website, had followed, and even said, "I've followed you for however long." And when we jumped on the call, that's where it felt weird, because he knew exactly what I did already. He knew exactly and I'd already done that work, which is exactly like you hear in other podcasts and other books or whatever, saying, you've already done all that work, all those 7, 11, 4, whatever interactions with you. He'd obviously already done that somehow with me, that I didn't need to sell myself to him anymore. And I was like, he's already bought in.
Perfect.
He just wants to know if I can help and how much.
Yeah.
And it was mind-blowing at the time. And so that's one project. That was just a small one to start with. Hopefully we'll pick that up in the new year. Another one recently actually happened where I got an introduction through the Innovation Hub locally, and I got the email back from the founder of this service-based company. And she wrote, the first line of her email was, "Ben, your name has come up 4 times by 4 different people in 4 different places before this intro. You must be the person to talk to." I was like, what? This is crazy. Who? And I think even after I got that email and I got back to her, I did a post out on LinkedIn not long after, thinking, it's like an appreciation thing, saying like, whoever has been throwing my name out there, almost like, thank you, right?
Yeah.
Because it's working. And someone even said to me, obviously your messaging is so clear that it's easy to refer and recommend you. And I think that's the most important thing, is making sure your message of what you do and how you do it or who you do it for is clear, so that whoever you talk to can easily pass that message across to the other people that they don't know, that they have only just met potentially, and then they do that introduction. And I had that from 2 other people earlier this year to say, Ben, you're very easy to refer because we know exactly, your messaging is so clear and we know what you do. I was like, great. But I don't think they really know exactly what we do, but they know top level what we do and how we could potentially help them. And I think this new client that we've just onboarded, it was the fastest that we've closed a new project, or the start. It's just a small bit from the strategy side of thing, but I closed it in 2.5 weeks, like from the intro to signing the agreement. But then I reflected back thinking, that's not 2.5 weeks, it's 18 months and 2.5 weeks. Of all that work that we've put into it, that she has made that decision much, much quicker than me working on, say, a current project that has taken us 2 years because of conversation we've had, but they weren't ready 2 years ago, but now they are. So very different scenarios. So yeah, those ones are very good examples. Yeah. And it just helps that it shows it works. And it's working.
And I guess you probably, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Ben, but, it feels like, or you get the sense of, you're not really doing anything spectacular. You're not kind of overly thinking, you're just being yourself. You're being authentic. You're sharing kind of your experiences. You're sharing challenges. You're sharing wins in business and at home, and that's why people resonate. It's why you're getting kind of 70 odd likes and loads of comments and stuff, and all those little touch points. You can follow up on all those as well, can't you? Thank you for liking it, thank you for commenting, let's carry on this conversation. But actually you're getting quite a lot organically coming in from it as well.
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
I think people buy from people, right? People buy from people, and if you're a nice person and if you're easy to work with and nice to work with, then hopefully they're going to want to work with you. what's interesting, like you're saying, 70 likes or whatever, even when we won a Design and Creativity Award locally, and that's the first business award that we won. And when I shared that, that's my biggest post ever, because people want to celebrate with you and for you. Obviously, if you're not a nice person, you may not get that engagement. But if you can, you want to leave that legacy of people will remember how they made you feel, right? And we hear it a lot with other people saying it as well. But it's so true that they're not going to remember the sofa or the car you buy, but they're going to remember how you feel, how you made them feel. And it's that same thing, is that, okay, well, there obviously is some kind of positive impact there somewhere, or you're giving, and you help and you add value when you can, however you can, whether it's from a voluntary perspective or even in business, is that hopefully the plan is that all of that comes back in some way or form, right? And I think that's more powerful than a lot of people kind of think.
It's exciting. I love it. And it's we follow a very similar strategy when it comes to LinkedIn, and I'm a big advocate for that. And yeah, just be a nice person and nice things will happen.
And I think it's also, you don't need to share everything. I think it's the main thing. And
but like, there's like 1 billion users on LinkedIn. Only something like 1% of people post something once a week or more. So you turning up a few times a week and being yourself and sharing your story, you're going to appear organically on more people's feeds. Anyone that follows you, anyone that's connected to you, is going to see your stuff and get to know you in a really natural way. And I get approached every week by consultancy owners who are tearing their hair out because they're not getting enough kind of new business in, and they say, Chris, can you refer me, or can you find me a business development manager with design experience? I said, well, you've got a team of business development managers sitting there running CAD right now. They've all got stories. They've all got kind of, get them posting. Anyone listening to this, I would say, go and follow Ben. And take a leave, because there's plenty of work out there, and there's plenty of space for kind of storytelling. I mean, it's what you do for a living, isn't it? But it just transfers some of that into LinkedIn content, and good things will happen, I think.
Absolutely. I think it's also then reflecting back on your own journey and your story. And I've only been able to do that recently with starting my own business, because, like I said, that need and want scenario is I had the opportunity to speak at a couple of universities and share my experiences, as well as in front of some other entrepreneurs and local businesses. And in doing that, particularly when talking to students afterwards, that was really inspiring. I was like, what are you talking about? That was just what, it doesn't seem so exciting until you reflect back and think, how many times or opportunities would that, or these other, say the students or people, or one guy particularly, I know he works for Nationwide. He'll know who he is if I send him this link. Straight away, he came up to me after, and every time I see him, I was like, I love seeing your stuff. I love seeing it. It's so inspirational. I'm now doing this. I've now gone and thrown whatever at the wall to see if it sticks, because of some of the stuff I've been sharing and the past journey, etc. And you then realize how privileged you are to have been able to go through that. But it's good to then help inspire those others. And I think even from that, it's a good thing probably for you, Chris, is I had one of the apprentices from MKU reach out to me to actually have a request. Could I have a one-to-one with you? Could I have a meet? Could we have a coffee? Yeah. To talk about how you got to where you are and some advice and feedback, etc.
What I do. Podcast host there. Well, that's wonderful, though.
It was incredible. I was like, you have reached out to me by yourself. Yes, we met that one time. Maybe we saw each other in passing again in the Innovation Hub. But you reached out to me. I was like, yes, I'm going to give you the time. I love that. I love that you've done that. Yeah, you can buy me the coffee for sure if you want to, but I'll get them if you want. But she was 20, right? I was like, this is incredible. But one of those things as well was like, don't try and rush it. And that's one of the things I said to her. Don't try and rush what you want. And I think we're in this world of we can get everything so instantly. Like, I wouldn't be where I am now and talking the way I do and who I'm talking to and the projects we're working on had I not done everything else before that. had I tried to do this before Floatrower and everything I was exposed to then, I wouldn't be giving that same experience at all.
Massively, yeah. Life is full of lessons. It's a journey, isn't it? So wonderful. That kind of, we're going to make this a kind of a super bumper episode, I think, because there's so much value. I've really enjoyed our conversation, Ben. Just before we go, what are you most excited about kind of in the next 12 months? Big question to end it on.
What am I most excited about in the next 12 months? So from a business perspective and design, we're growing, and we've got a couple of big projects lined up that hopefully we're going to expand the team as well and get that team back again that I've referred back to from earlier. We've already started to over the last 12 months and start building on that again. So that's really, really exciting. I think even if you do follow on LinkedIn, you'll start seeing more projects because we'll get to that stage where we can share things and we can talk about them. So I think that, that's exciting for me because it's like everything is happening and all that work stress.
But it comes with reward though, doesn't it? All those things.
Yeah. And it just feels better, right? And it is one of those things. If you put the energy in, it's like going to the gym. If you want muscles or you want to get fit and you get it instantly without doing the hard work, it doesn't feel as good as actually doing the hard work because of everything else that's going through chemicals and reactions, etc., going through your body. It just feels better at the end of it. And I think, exciting. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, there's something written on the wall at my gym. It's it's not getting easier. You're getting stronger. And with all those reps, so keep going. And all these things, it compounds. So keep being the nice person, keep turning up, being authentic, and doing a good job, but learning, asking questions. And it'll be good. So that seems like a nice note to end it on. So Ben, thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you soon.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Whyte Design. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review wherever you're listening. It really helps others discover the podcast. And while you're at it, why not share it with a friend or colleague who'd enjoy it too? If you'd like to stay connected or explore more about the work we're doing at Kodu, feel free to visit teamkodu.com or connect with me, Chris Whyte, on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.